So now we are in section 6.6, and I want to work through example 2 with you. I've already got a bunch of scribbles going on, but I want to walk through those individually. And so here, let me see if it'll refocus better. It says to find the amplitude, period, and phase shift of these, and then to graph the function. So several of the things I've been showing you that were coming up, they're now here. So if they're asking us to take y equal 2 cosine 4x plus 3 pi, good grief, it's still going, plus 1, and to graph it, I want to ask some of the same questions. And so some of the questions I've been asking you are what type of graph and what's the direction. So part of this is noticing that we have a positive 2. So positive means it's going to do its normal thing for whatever cosine is. And so we know what our normal cosine graph looks like, and we can even come off on the side and start looking at that if I'm doing a normal cosine, it's normally going to start up top, cut down right here at pi over 2 at 0, go down to the bottom at pi, come back up through 0 at 3 pi over 2, and then end back up here at 1. And so that's one complete cycle for cosine. And then we can replicate that going backwards where we're down and then we're back up. But that's our general idea, and it tells us with the positive that's going to do that normal flow. And so it's going to do the start up, go down, and then come back up. Okay, that's good to know that it is a cosine. But then we've got some other stuff going on. So the type and direction are as you see. Normal direction for a cosine. It asks us to go ahead and say amplitude, period, phase shift. So we're going to look at all types of whatever's going on. And so we'll go ahead and look at what is amplitude, what is period. I like to add in subinterval. And then it wants to know what is the phase shift. So we'll call it PS. But then I'd also like to throw in vertical shift. And this is what it's going to look like for you on our tests. I will ask you to tell me the amplitude, period. You don't have to do this one, but I think you should. And I'll ask you to identify the phase shift and the vertical shift. So here we go. For amplitude, it's going to be the absolute value of that number right there. And the absolute value of 2 is 2. And so as I am writing these down, my brain is thinking transformational. My brain's going to be thinking 5 key points, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But what amplitude of 2 means is that if this is our center, this is our 0, then we're actually going to go up to a 2 and down to a negative 2, and that's what our amplitude is going to be. Keeping that in mind, let's talk about period. Remember that period, okay, wait, it's not tangent or cotangent, so it's going to be pi, or sorry, I said the wrong one, 2 pi over omega. So we got a bunch more junk going on in here. I know in the videos at some points he pulled these out. Let's see, this would be this. And sometimes he didn't pull those out. The formulas that were given in the book, I'm just going to stick with those. So if I'm doing 2 pi over omega, this is omega, so I'll have 2 pi over, 4. And what that tells us is that every pi over 2, wow, that's going to be fast. We're going through the cycle every pi over 2, pi over 2, pi over 2, pi over 2. It's going to be a fast period. But I'd like you to also notice that I want to take the period, can't see that, I want to take the period and cut it into fourths. And that's going to give us our subintervals, and it's going to help us with those key points. And so cutting it into subintervals, I've got pi over 2 divided by 4 over 1, which is keep it, change it, flip it, or any of the jingles you may know. What that means is we've got us a pi over 8. So this thing is happening. It's going to have a complete cycle every pi over 2, but it's going to happen every 1/8 of a pi. All of these key points are going to be happening. Phase shift and vertical shift. So on phase shift and vertical shift, I need two things. And this is where sometimes people will miss these on the test, because I need two things. I need a direction and I need a number. So the phase shift we found is going to be phi divided by omega. Phi divided by omega. But phi was weird. If it says a plus inside of here, oh no, that's not what we're going to use. We're not going to use a plus there. It's not how the formula is actually written. So we actually have to come over here and write a negative 3 pi. And I should have written that my formula is phi divided by omega. You can't see that, so let me scoot right there. And so my phi is negative 3 pi, and my omega is 4, and we're done. And I either need you to tell me it's a negative 3 pi over 4, or I need you to tell me we're going to go left 3 pi over 4, and ultimately this is going to be the start of our cycle. Our start is here, and I don't have a negative there, except there's my left. It's going to last for a whole pi over 2, and I'm going to have key points every pi over 8. But wait, there's just a little bit more. Vertical shift. This one actually has a vertical shift. We are going up 1. And I need you to either tell me it's a plus 1 or we are going up 1. I want both parts on the test. To me that says I fully understand that I'm going plus 1, up 1, up 1, however you want to say it. And then we can start and get busy. I'm going to draw my graph a little off here as far as I'm going to give more stuff over here, because my phase shift has gone from 0 over to negative 3/4 pi. So I'm going to go ahead and do like a negative pi over 2 and a negative pi. You can't see it, sorry about that. And then this will be negative 3 pi over 4, and this will be negative pi over 4. So I can think mentally, I'm putting this in fourths real fast, and this is where our graph is going to start. So our normal cosine is going to start up top. Our normal cosine starts at 1, but this one's not an amplitude of 1, it's an amplitude of 2. But we're shifting up another 1, so we don't actually start at 2, we actually start 1 above that, so we're actually going to start at 3. That's going to be our highest point. And so I don't know how you and your brain want to think through all of this. You can do all sorts of things. He has demonstrated multiple options. Our book walks you through some options. I'm showing you some options. But either way you go, you need to understand all the pieces and parts, that this is a cosine, it's starting normally, and if it is starting normally, I would normally have a high point of 1, but no, the amplitude goes up to 2, but no, the plus 1 moves me up to a 3, and that's what I wrote down. So let's look at a minimum. Normally, I would go down to negative 1, but this has an amplitude of 2, so I actually go down to negative 2, but not really, because the plus 1 shifts me up 1, and so my actual lowest part is negative 1. What that also means is my normal x-axis has been shifted up, and everything is going to revolve around not the x-axis, but right above it, because we have shifted up 1. Whew! All of that to say, we've taken care of amplitude. We've taken care of the idea of cosine. That's got to come back for us. Type and direction, amplitude, period. This thing is going to last a whole half pi. My brain's not wrapping around that just yet, so let me jump to this. That's the one that helps my brain. I'm going to have key points happening at every pi over 8. And so that's eighths. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to divide this part that I've already got started up into eighths. And I'm actually going to go ahead and label. This is a negative 1 pi over 8. This is a negative 2 pi over 8, and when I reduce that, that becomes a negative 4th. Yay, I'm on the right track. Negative 3 pi over 8. Negative 4 pi over 8. Yep, we know that reduced as negative pi over 2. Negative 5 pi over 8. and negative 6 pi over 8. And yep, that'll reduce to how it all worked out. A quick double check for my math, for my brain, just to kind of keep pace with what's going on here. So because we had a phase shift that was negative 3 pi over 4, that's going to be our starting point. Our starting point is a normal cosine, and a normal cosine starts up top. So I'm going to start at my highest point, and here goes my cosine. That's going to be my next place. I need to be at 0. Well, I don't have a 0 because my 0 shifted, but that puts me right there at my 1. My next key point, I'm going to go to my lowest point, which I'm having to write on my point here, and I'm going down to this lowest point of negative 1. At the next one, I'll go back up, and then I'll go back up, and let's see if we've gone half a pi. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, so 4 pi over 8, gone 4/8. That reduces to a pi over 2. People, we have gone a full period. We are there. And so I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to smooth this out. And I have completed one period of this graph, but on the test, I'm going to ask you to identify key points and run this thing 2 complete cycles. So while I'm in the mode of eighths here, negative 1/8, here's 0, here will be 1 pi over 8. I just need to go 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, let me back up 1 and do 1 here. Negative 6 pi over 8. That'll be negative 7 pi over 8. Oh yeah, we're doing it. And so I'm going to keep up my pattern. I would be at 0. I would be at my lowest point. And so here comes more. Over here, I would go back down to my 0, which is up 1. I would go down to my lowest point, and I'll go back up to 0, back up to my highest point. Just playing a little pattern game here, and I've got more than 2 complete cycles. And then as far as points, you just take your pick. I don't care. I will grade whatever points you give me. I hope you stay within this range and don't go all crazy. But I'll be ready for whatever you've got. So why not start back over here? 1 point is negative 3 pi over 4, and it goes up to 3. 1 point is done. Let's do this one. Negative 5, no. Negative 3, oh it is, negative because that was 6. Negative 5 pi over 8, that one stops at our 1. Let's do this one. Negative pi over 2, that bottoms out at negative 1. Negative 3 pi, and I hope you write better than I do and in a better order, but you never know. This one comes back up to the 1. You can't see that. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's finish right here at my negative pi over 4. I'm up here at 3. So I am done. I have listed 5 coordinates. I have listed 2 or drawn 2 complete cycles. I am done. The only thing you might consider doing, the only thing you probably, if you have time before you turn in your test, is just pick a point. Pick any of these points. And you can pick lazy, you can pick like 0. Oh, I love 0. So let's pick 0. We think that 0 is going to have a y of 1. Okay? If that's what we think, we're plugging in 0 for x, and we are hoping that when we get done, our y is 1. Because on the graph I just drew, at 0 of x, we are at 1 for y. So we're going to plug in 0 right there for x. And we are hoping we end up with a 1. So I'm going to grab my calculator, and I'm going to make my calculator turn on. I'm going to grab my calculator, and we're just going to play around with it pretty slowly here. 4 times 0 is going to be 0. So I've got a 2 times a hang on, I'm about to do radians, and I'm not in radians. So let us do a degree. I'm going to do degrees. I'm going to click over to radian and tell it that's what I want is radians. And so down at the bottom, yep, right there it says radians. So here we go. 2 times cosine of negative, I have to use the little negative down here at the bottom, negative 3, and where did pi go? No, oh, there he is. Negative 3 pi, close my parentheses. So what I've got on here is 2 times cosine of negative 3 pi. And then, I might as well just hit equals on that one. I'm going to add 1. And when I add 1, it puts me at negative 1. So something is not right. Because when I did my graph over here, I ended up that I had, oh, and I see exactly what I did. So let me use this as an example. When you're finished with the test, I would go back and spot check my decimals, spot check my units. I would spot check some backdoor checking like I just checked. And so I thought at 0 I was supposed to be at 1. When I did the calculation, so I've either done the calculation wrong or I've done a graph wrong. I've got something going wrong, but that's a good thing that I can go find it and fix it. And so where I'd like to point out my mistake is right here at negative pi over 8. Do y'all see how I'm at this point right here? And this point right here is coming off of this, well, maybe that's my problem, is I'm not lining up my dots. So this dot should be here at my negative pi over 4. This dot should be here. And then I got some random dot and then threw in another dot. Okay, here's my problem. I need to clean up my graph. That's not a part of our graph. This needs to go down to right here. This is not a part of my graph. And then I'm going to go back up through the 1 here. And then I'll be back over here. So I would have gotten counted off on my graph because I didn't have my points right on my graph. But I caught it by checking it algebraically. So I am glad I messed up. But either way, a whole lot of stuff going on this piece of paper. Make sure you start and stop this video as many times as you need to really let all of this soak in. Our graphing is huge. It is very important, but it's very doable. So hang in there and keep going on your trig.